He says there is something, she says there is something not quite right about me. You know what I mean. Something is not quite right about you too. Absence where there should be presence, flat where there should be curves, round where you should be narrow, hairy where you should be smooth. Not quite right, kid, not quite right. Are you a chick or a dude? Shave already, lady. Get a wax. Boy, stop being so damn dramatic. Cut your hair already. Be a man. Something not quite right about my talk, my walk, the way I sit, the volume of my voice, the spread of my arms, the way I take up space, the arrogance of my confidence. You know what I mean. Something is not quite right about you too. Gotta be. Something just not right about opting out, refusing to choose, failing to care about pronouns, salt in the wound. Androgynous, ambiguous, fickle, fab, ridiculous. Must be there is something not quite right, something too much, too loud, too strong, too wrong, and something also not enough, not sweet, not soft, not girl enough, not rough, not tough, not boy enough. So totally unclear. So annoying, so uncommitted, too much and not enough. You know what I mean. You have been too in between, tiptoeing like you do, left to right, dim to bright, breaking slow, then accelerating recklessly into the curve, streaking back and forth like we do across this painstaking boundary, a dangerous dance we choose. Like we don't know, like nobody told us the rules, like we haven't heard the threats. We thwart so many conventions, wear fashion so recklessly fantastic it could get us killed. But still we dance, like our truth is stronger than their fists, like ambiguity will last longer than these binaries, these myths, like we can refuse to pick one or two, pick both, be both, or pick the wrong one. One gender, two gender, three gender, four. Like being Indians, we could choose indigenous terms, indigenous roles, Nadli, Two-Spirit, Hawami, Napayakan. Like being Africans, we could remember a time when we honored sacred men who were gentle, sacred warrior women. Like we should be celebrated for who we were born to be again. No, must be something not quite right about you, about me, because we have too much nerve, too many ovaries, cojones, for our own damn good. Parading our strangeness around like we do. Too much love for our own damn good. Too much faith in the way we are, not the way we should be. Yeah, something not quite right about you, about me, about they, about Z. Too much and not enough of everything we were supposed to be. Sacred space. Tell them we are holding sacred space. One gender, two genders, three genders, four. We call ourselves the Seminole people. Mikasuki, Creek, Oklawaha, Trail. But we've gone by other names we won't translate, names we can't repeat, names that are nobody's business but our own, and other names they didn't want us to keep. We come from many places, but we were always here. Before the Spanish came, we were Ikanayuksagi, the original Peninsulares. Kunti bread eaters, Calusa, Temukua, Ayes, Tequesta, Apalachi, Alachua. We were sailors, farmers, fishers. Our queens protected us. Our priests danced for us. Augustine was not our saint. They called us fierce and powerful peoples, death-obsessed, serpent worshippers, giants and smooth-faced pirates, before half of us left for Cuba, Bahamas, Nicaragua, and the rest of us who survived Spanish Christian kindness, baptism at the point of a sword, escaped up north. Before the French came, we were Natchez, Biloxi, Alabami, Chichimacha, Toltec. We venerated the women, the dead, and the sun, with song, smoke, and shell-laden pyramids. We spoke many languages. We knew all our neighbors. They called us mound builders, sun worshippers, formidable foes. When they grew envious and impatient before the messengers could gather 5 nations of warriors, they killed women and children, fought a war of extinction. Those of us who weren't sold to English plantations down south or to Haiti escaped to the east. Before the English came, we were Hitchiti, Cherokee, Yuchi, Yamasee, Tunica, Oconee, many peoples coming together, creating and recreating ourselves, moving when necessary, united against a common foe. We survived in our stories. We learned to love strangers. We traveled south. Before Jackson, before rabid flesh-hunting Carolinians came, we were fluid and raceless. Igbo, Dahomey, Ga, Fon. Hausa, Yoruba, we were U and Dagon, farmers teaching hunters, clans expanding. We were Mikasuki, Tallahassee, Muskogee, allies and kinfolk, before they called us mulatto, mestizo, musty, negro, stolen, property, creek. Before they tried to separate us out one from another, we were families. Our neighbors called us Ufala, Seminole, those who camp at a distance, remnants and renegades, trailblazers and healers, clever and careful. We fought war upon war. We called ourselves Katishe, Luchi, Hatki, red, black, and white, Estakadi, Estaluski, Kanyuk, Testachati, people of the pointed land. Regardless of Oakley, we were Yati, human. We traveled in circles, but they could not defeat us. So they called us savages, could not baptize us, so they called us heathens, could not find us, so they called us wiped out, could not understand us, so they called us mysterious, could not educate us, so they called us backwards, could not convince us to learn their language, so they called us hostile, shy, afraid. But they were like Pahekoshle to us. And we had a yekche. We had medicine for that. We kept moving. We took in strangers. We moved south back to a place where soft pink people could not survive. Many of their soldiers died. They took to passing laws and telling stories about us. And they made up names. When they couldn't identify our diversity anymore, they called us Florida Indians or Florida Creeks or else Seminoles, convinced it was an English corruption of Cimarron, Spanish for wild man, and not the name our cousins gave us. When they got tired of fighting us, we became a legend. They spent 100 years trying to find the last unconquered Indians, sent in the army, government surveyors, sports fishermen, anthropologists, missionaries, but we were untrackable and intractable when found. We cost the government an embarrassment of riches and dead white men. In their eyes, we were the last frontier. So they did what a man does who cannot fish. They drained the whole pond in search of us, brought in heavy machinery, and sucked dry the glorious Everglades, turned the swamps to sand and rock and clay, rounded us up to ask our names. Some names are for lovers, others are for friends. Our names are for our people, and we never told them to white men. We said Sally, Tommy, Cypress, James. You didn't understand why we all had the same names. But before name giving or name calling, we were here. We say before you left Spain in search of your splintered self, we were here. Before you realized England was cramped and dirty, we were here. Before you left France for your piece of the pie, we were here. Before you tried to carve a nation out of our expatriation, before you defined your red-blooded American selves in terms of our absence, we were here. Some names sort, others deceive. These names tell stories historians refuse to believe. We call ourselves the Seminole people, Mikasuki, Creek, Oklawaha, Trail. We call you Ochkoche, the smoke in our eyes. I call myself Seminole, and I know refutations abound. I have been camping at a distance my whole life. Whose kinfolk am I? I make my own fire, mimicking the fires nearby. I sew my own patchwork, mimicking the grandmothers I have known. I cook my own lonely pot of self-keep. You dare eat with me. I call myself Seminole, and I know refutations abound. I have been camping at a distance my whole life. My ties are tenuous, my self-naming suspicious. But I know who I am. Exiles tend to have the most vivid, the most tenacious memories. We tend to sing the songs the loudest, if often off key. I call myself Seminole. I camp at a distance. I have never left. Yet I'm forever traveling home.
Yaha yaha jiboni de jizzle jana de some yaha yaha jiboni de jizzle jana de some yaha yaha jiboni de jizzle jana de some yaha yaha jiboni de jizzle jana de some
Dear Grandma, the move to Arizona was hard. Everyone in this high school is so racist. 3,000 kids and only 10 of us are colored, any color. 10 of us are all friends, all except Johnny Jumper. He's an Indian, a Seminole like us, I think. He gets nervous when I look at him. He only talks to white kids. I think he's afraid I'm going to tell everyone that he's Indian. Arizonans hate Indians and blacks and Mexicans. I wish you could still talk, Grandma. Dear Grandma, I love college so much. The library stays open till 2 in the morning. I've read so many books on Maroon societies and Seminoles and Southeastern tribes. Everything is starting to make sense. Dear Grandma, I've been wearing black for months. I'm so distressed at your passing. I mean, I'm happy to be at Howard, but I'm sad. I feel so proud to be black here. So many beautiful, intelligent black people in one place. I'm studying hard like you taught me, and I'm learning as much as I can about African history and Afro-Caribbean culture. I'm so proud of being Haitian now that I know the history of that island, the first free black nation in the Western Hemisphere. I have some Haitian friends here. We speak French together. Unfortunately, the history department has no courses on Black Indian history. I told the chair of the department that needs to change. Oh, and it turns out they hate gay people. Everyone's in the closet here, but all the gays gather around the flagpole at noon. The straights don't know. We're hidden in plain sight. Dear Grandma, you'll be so proud of me. I went to my first sweat today. Some Piscataway invited me. We started at dawn, cutting down wood, building the lodge. They said we had to fast all day and work in silence, and that reminded me of Grandpa. I started out praying for you all, but I'm ashamed to admit that after a few rounds, I was just praying to survive. It was so hot. I could feel my skin just peeling off of me. The leader said we could beg Mercy to leave if it was too hot, but I knew you wouldn't want me to leave early, since it required crawling out backwards and nothing but a towel. So undignified. Afterward, when we were eating our venison stew, those Piscataway told me nobody ever lasted the whole sweat their first time when it was that hot. They called me strong-hearted, and I felt proud. Dear Grandma, guess what? I got the internship at the Smithsonian in the program for African American culture. On my lunch break, I hang out at the program for American Indian culture, too. They said no, I couldn't intern in both programs. I don't know why not. One or the other, kid, one or the other. People are always trying to make me pick. It's so ridiculous. But I'm compiling a bibliography of Black Indian history. So many people are unaware of the joint history of our people. I'm going to change that, Grandma. Dear Grandma, you'll be happy to hear that I'm back in Albion this week talking to the old people again. I actually got your brother Estes the Hermit to talk to me and tell me about your parents. Then too, cousin Joe McCracken took me around to meet everyone and visit all the graveyards. I'm writing everything down. I don't want us to forget who we are after all the old people leave us. Dear Grandma, this PhD program is hard, but I love it. Lots of Blacks and Indians and mixed bloods in my department. I got elected to head the Native Graduate Search Committee, and we tried really hard to get the faculty to hire the Seminole applicant or the Yamasee applicant, but they just hired this white Indian professor instead. We were all really disappointed. It would make such a difference to have a professor from an Eastern tribe. The Native professor I'm working with now, he told me all the tribes back east were wiped out or lost their culture, and I got so mad. I told him, we are not wiped out, and we have not forgotten our culture. He apologized to me later, but it still hurt. A lot of Western Indians out here, they think that way. Dear Grandma, I miss you. I wish you could meet all the Seminole I'm meeting. I'm meeting so many Seminole in Berkeley and Oakland. You would like them. They're from Florida like you. And some of them are black too. And they're really proud. They even have an organization of black Native Americans, and they dance in all the powwows. I go to all their gatherings. I'm learning a lot from them. Dear Grandma, don't be mad at me, but I'm at the Seminole Reservation. I know you always said our people were never defeated, never signed a treaty, and never lived on a reservation. But I just had to visit. All the Seminole elders in Oakland, Uncle Don and Millie and Benita, encouraged me to go. If you were still here, I would have asked you too. And don't you know, when the Seminole cultural director picked me up from my hotel to take me to the res, I was blown away. He had the same exact hands as you and Dad. I guess those are Seminole hands. Everyone was really nice, not hung up on my blackness like those Western Indians. The chief invited me to all the feasts and gatherings and to meet the old people. The old people told me point blank that the Seminole have always been mixed with black. And the clan mothers, they look just like you and your sisters. I couldn't believe it. At one point during the end of my stay, the chief took me aside and he told me, you know, the word Seminole means camp at a distance. And the tribe was made up of a lot of different tribes and races who all joined together to fight the invaders. He said, historically, the way a remnant band would join the Seminole is they would camp at a distance and learn their ways. Eventually, the big camp would invite the little camp to join them. He said, I was doing a good job of camping at a distance. Dear Grandma, you will be proud of me. I'm almost done with my dissertation on indigenous philosophies. Remember my friend I told you about, Harley, the Omaha? Well, he hired me to help him write a grant for the All Nations nonprofit. We're both really active in the community, but he's much more of a bigwig than me. But despite his status, after he asked me to work with him, he told me I needed to keep a low profile about my sexuality. He's gay too. He's afraid if they know I'm gay, they'll guess he's gay. He said if Native people found out, he'd get fired and wouldn't get work in the community. He's much better connected than me, so he must know what he's talking about. It makes me really sad to think that even here in California, we aren't safe. I promised I wouldn't blow his cover. Dear Grandma, I have good news. I was running the Native Finance Forum I told you about, and I met a person named Ken who's starting a Two-Spirit Society and wants us to march in the gay parade. I read about this term in books, but this is the first time I'm actually meeting someone and hearing about an organization. Can you imagine a whole organization just for Two-Spirit natives? Most of my gay native friends won't join, but I will. I'm pretty sure Mike Smith doesn't care if I'm a Two-Spirit. He likes my work, and that's what matters to him. I won't get fired. Dear Grandma, you won't believe what happened. My friend Timothy, you remember him, the Oklahoma Seminole from UCLA? Well, he came over to my house late one night last week to tell me he had to drive all the way to Oklahoma to vote because there were some folks there on his reservation trying to pass a referendum to kick all the black Seminoles out of the tribe. He wasn't able to stop them. He wasn't able to stop them. They kicked them all out. The Seminole Nation of Oklahoma just kicked out all the black Seminole. Something happened at Seminole. Something stunning, something sad, somebody forgot in the 7th month of the 16th decade after their unwilling survival. Somebody among the survivors of 3 wars. Somebody after encountering 3 types of treacherous whites. Somebody after 3 forms of federal foul play after being allotted, terminated, and reorganized. Somebody forgot. Somebody forgot. And these stricken people started to divide themselves up. How is it? How is it? Who could have? Who would have? Somebody forgot to tell somebody something. How else to explain? A people dividing itself up after the conquest. How else to explain? A people saying ancestors don't, history don't, kinship don't matter, only race. Somebody, maybe somebody's mother, somebody, maybe somebody's son, somebody forgot to tell somebody something. Somebody forgot to sing the songs. Somebody forgot to tell the stories. No honor stories, no honor stories for the dead. How else to explain 300 years of struggle evaporated in a single election? How else to explain people claiming Seminole and full blood in the same breath? How else to explain disowning relatives for the white man's money, guns, and high-stakes bingo games? How else to explain? Somebody forgot to remember who we are, who we were, who we have been, and how we got here. Somebody forgot to remember the Yamasee Seminole slaves married in. Somebody forgot to remember the numerous and fumbling fragments of bands finding each other in Florida, escaping, cascading into new places, new races, calling each other kin. Somebody forgot to remember we weren't always the Seminole tribe, just one more band of ragged survivors escaping the spreading plague of Europeans marching across the land. Somebody forgot what the word Seminole stands for, what it means somehow, with all the stories our grandmothers told us, somehow with all the pride we carry puffed up in our patchwork shirts, somehow after 5 reservations, 2 languages, and 3 countries, somebody forgot to tell somebody something, and we have forgotten who we are. How else to explain the separation General Jessup set in motion, being finished up by modern so-called Oklahoma Seminole? How else to explain reviving the legacy of Indian Commissioner Harris, skilled separator of Indians by color, renowned returner of suspiciously dark-skinned Cherokee, Seminole, and Creek to the white planters who claimed them as slaves? Somebody forgot to tell somebody something. Somebody forgot the ancestors too. Somebody forgot the hundreds of black Indians who died at the fort, the Negro Fort in Apalachicola, so that the red Indians might live. And somebody forgot all the red-skinned men and women who died in the first Seminole War rather than separate out the so-called blacks from within. Somebody forgot to remember the demands of Chief Alligator and McCanopy, who said they wouldn't move west without the guarantee that the dark-skinned black and half-breeds among them would be allowed to come with. And somebody forgot the ancestors who died at Mulatto Girls Town, who died at Payne's Town, at King Hage's Town, at Bucker Woman's Town, all so-called Seminole Negro towns. Somebody forgot Mulatto King of Chocloniqua Town, too. Nobody did, but somebody should have told those Indians holed up in Wavoka in Oklahoma about the half-breed Seminole John Horse who founded that town, who fought with Osceola and Wildcat, who traveled to Washington, who for being black was forced to flee to Mexico in search of an elusive justice he never received. But somebody forgot to tell somebody something. It seems so many stories have been forgot. The ashes of our ancestors blow about unrecognized, and we have forgotten where we came from, who we once were, and how we have come to exist. How else to explain a people dividing itself up after the conquest? I read that poem on a panel of scholars. And after I read it, the moderator turns to the other panelist. She was an Oklahoma Seminole. And the moderator turns to her and she says, "Is this true? Did you forget?" And the Oklahoma Seminole said, "Yes, we did." She said, "We had to. We just couldn't bear it. After the Trail of Tears, we couldn't remember anything. When we got there, we just decided to start over. We just said, our history starts now, and nothing happened before now. There was no Trail of Tears. There was nothing. We just have to start now." There are some wounds that never heal. No amount of tending, pretending, careful, concentrated concern, nor positive neglect, release of regret. Some sores, nothing erases, nothing cures. Bandages don't hide, scars refuse to fade. Some wounds are for life, testimony to strife, tell on us, broadcast to the world, accusations in the flesh. Let everybody know what got left, what was undone, what mourning song was sung, what can't be forgot, what and who, after all we have become. There are some wounds, red gashes of pain, raised black and brown, white welts remain, some scars that grow larger, not smaller, with time. Some wounds that mark us, stain the soul, set one forever apart, cause people to stare and start. Some wounds that can't be glanced at, never become commonplace, happenstance, never get replaced by glory, funny stories, the champions parade, never become red badges of courage. And these are the wounds nobody talks about, everybody sees. These are the wounds nobody wants, everybody runs from, nobody seeks. Which is why these are the wounds that never heal. We refuse to believe they're even real. It seems easier somehow. Never mind the screaming, bleeding, tirades. In the end, we just refuse to be marked by something we can't change, rearrange, overcome, unravel, or defeat. Still, there are some wounds that never heal. My family taught me everything I need to know about survival. What they didn't tell me, they showed me. The rest was passed down in the blood. And I'm a good student. I learned all the rules, all the cues, all the strategies, all the ways to overcome. My father broke the national record for jumping hurdles at 18, walked through countless doors, slammed in his face because he disregarded rules of race and place. I broke the record for suicide runs at 12. Maybe it was those gang of jeering kids. Every day after school, nigger, Pocahontas, mutt. I learned early how to run, not stop to ask what. And I learned early that sometimes you have to walk the long way home. Sometimes you have to walk the wrong way home to avoid the wrong people. Sometimes you have to walk alone. Trudge on train tracks, mud-filled dirt paths. Sometimes you have to push through a crowd, whisper when all around you are loud, shout when they tell you you should be praying. My mother outperformed the boys in school at 10, found out early being a girl genius was a big problem. Paid for her big brains and beauty all her life. Fired from every job where she outshone the men. Sexually harassed, raped, and beaten. She walked 100 miles with broken bones to escape a violent marriage. And she is the only reason I am alive. With her Viking vigor, her German gall, she taught me everything I needed to know about how to survive. Grandma Phoebe Ann saw her husband killed by a posse of white men, baked pies to support her children, and carried on despite what they did. Grandpa Robert caught a freight train, left home to become a man at a young age. Only 12, he worked hard and brought his whole family north, built them homes so they could start again, washed the stain of slavery from all his kin. All my life I've been name-called and attacked for being red, for being mixed, for being gay, for being black. And I've had men misname me, put their hands on me, try to unravel me, because the combination of my vagina, my daring, and my brains pissed off and threatened them. And I've had homophobes turn their backs on me, although we shared the same skin. And I've had people of lighter hues resent my gains, stick out their foot to trip me so I wouldn't win. After heart attacks and strokes, being paralyzed and broke, after doctors denied me medicine, telling me, don't worry about your test results, hon. Young women don't get heart disease. It was a joke to them, and when I almost died, it was my fault, they said. I must have had a toke, snuffed some coke, 'cause that's what we do. And I've been stopped by the police again and again and again, so they could show off their powerful nexus of guns and badges and white skin. Lucky for me, my ancestors taught me everything I needed to know about persistence, resistance, getting over, and carrying on, because I remember my ancestors and all they lived through, all they did as blacks, as Indians, as strong-hearted women, as holders of tradition. Grandma Lula taught me how to survive with herbs. Grandma Maddie taught me how to survive with poetry. Grandpa Robert taught me how to survive with nature. Grandpa Roy taught me about forgiveness. Grandpa Iola. They called him Elijah, but that wasn't his name. Iola was a shouter. He called down the spirit. He held ceremony in the dark, moist earth. He built a shack above it so the whites wouldn't know. They thought it was an outhouse, but when you opened the door, you entered into a ceremony. Grandpa Iola was a shouter. He gathered the people in the dark, moist earth. He shouted down the spirit. Grandpa Iola gave me his turtle medicine. Grandma Anna Boone sold pies. She was a fierce and powerful woman. A mixed blood, colored, from Cherokee, North Carolina. She was an entrepreneur. She sold pies to both sides in the Civil War. And she threw bones. White men came to see her in dark, shadowy places so she could tell them their future. Grandma Anna gave me her pie medicine. She taught me how to survive by feeding people and by reading people. Grandpa Estes was a visionary, abandoned by his family for being too dark-skinned. He came to Florida from Haiti, first free black nation. He started the first Emancipation Day in Albion, Michigan, to celebrate the end of slavery. He was Natchez on his mother's side, proof that the Natchez really did survive. His mama called him Seminole, but he was a proud black man. He married a Seminole woman. Grandpa Estes gave me his pride and his hawk medicine. Mary Nichols was a dark-haired, white-skinned Sami in a country that despised the indigenous. She came on a big boat to this America. Ellis Island called her Nichols, but that wasn't her name. Just a way to designate her, to separate her out from the others. Mary taught me humility, how to survive by being quiet when you have to be quiet. She gave me her rabbit medicine. I come from a long line of people who knew how to survive. My ancestors taught me by example what it means to overcome, and I'm a good student. I studied their stories as a youth. I remember where I come from. My ancestors were slaves. My ancestors were kept in chains. My ancestors survived the theft of their land, the theft even of bones, of graves, hiding out in swamps, being hunted like deer, fighting war after war, losing the homeland they held dear. My ancestors watched their children kidnapped or sold away, survived erasure from history, backbreaking labor and rape. My ancestors were kidnapped, removed, detribalized, brutalized, relocated, terminated, and renamed. And they are the only reason I am alive. They taught me everything I know about how to survive. I owe my tenacity to my ancestors' legacies. I would dishonor them, their struggles, their triumphs, their travails, if I let anyone change me, break me, just because they hate me. My gender, my race, my sexuality, erase me because of what I was born to be. I'm not going to act like I don't know who I am and where I come from. I am the child that peopled my ancestors' dreams when they looked into their mind's eye and tried to imagine a future in which they could believe. So it doesn't matter what anyone's done to me or done to them. I was brought forth with blood and tears and sweat and an insane belief in possibilities. My life is a victory. How could it not be when my ancestors, when your ancestors lived and died so that we could be? What if it turns out life was meant to be lived as a ceremony? And what if the ceremony requires all of us? What if we need 4 races like we need the 4 directions? What if we need 4 genders like we need the 4 elements? What if we can't even run a ceremony without the 2 spirits, without the mixed bloods, without those camping at a distance? What if it turns out life was meant to be lived as a ceremony and we aren't doing it right because we aren't loving each other right? What if it turns out life was meant to be lived like a ceremony and in the end, all that matters was who could testify to your love, not who you loved, but that you loved. We call ourselves two-spirit people, Nadli, Asegi, Napayaken. We have always been here, but are forever coming home. We used to camp at a distance, but our camp is growing. If you don't know us, it's because somebody forgot to tell somebody something, and you have forgotten who you once were. You can't light your fires. You can't run your ceremonies without us. Even if you don't know this, you know this, because when you try, something's not quite right without us. Shonabashe.
Hallelujah, hey God is hallelujah, hallelujah, hey God is hallelujah. Miko sa palgit may manapogis hallelujah. Miko sa palgit my mana pokis. Hello, hallelujah.